welcome back to the 20th Century Dude channel. So we're going to be doing it a bit differently today in our Features of the Month entry. We're not going to be doing a double feature this time, but rather a whole trilogy of movies. Stuff that I grew up with. The Cars trilogy, to be more exact. It is now the 20th anniversary of the first Cars movie, and I remember seeing this at the drive-in a very long time ago. It was quite an interesting experience because that was the first time I had ever been at a movie theater. Period. This is the first time I got to see a PIXAR movie in theaters, or any movie in theaters for that matter. And Cars happened to be the first one. And boy, was it a joy that Christmas when I got this very same Cars DVD right here. Of course, you can tell it's a bit worn out. It's been through a lot over the years. Yeah, this DVD right here, this should be broken right now, honestly, from the amount of times I have played this thing, and it seems like it's probably been endless times. But yes, this DVD, out of a lot of things, should be broken, and yet somehow it still endures to this day. How, I don't know, but yes, here we are. But we are going to be talking about the Cars trilogy today, more predominantly the first one, because again, it is his 20th anniversary, so we want to do a very heavy retrospective there. But we are going to be talking about the other two installments in the trilogy as well. And yes, this is a trilogy, but it's not like a fluid confined trilogy, sort of like the Toy Story trilogy is. Or it feels like one story from beginning to end. The Cars trilogy really is kind of weird. You have the first one, which is this family racing movie, and then the second one shakes it up. It's kind of racing, but it's more of like a wannabe James Bond flick almost. It's a really weird entry in the series, and we'll get more to Cars 2 in just a minute. And then Cars 3 completely forgets all about what happened in 2 and goes right back to racing. And I mean, it is a complete hard reset. We don't even mention the fact that there are still spy gadgets that Mater possesses in his vehicle whatsoever. That is not brought up once. So Cars 3 is probably more of a proper sequel to the first one than even 2 is. But yeah, this is a kind of a weird trilogy. And again, we'll get to the sequels in just a moment. But starting off with the first one, this was in a period where Pixar was making hit after hit after hit. In fact, I would argue from Toy Story 1 to Toy Story 3, there was not one bad movie in that batch. I mean, sure, there were a couple lesser ones than others. I mean, I don't think Bug's Life has stood as much as the test of time as some of the other movies have. Even Cars, I guess, could be deemed a, quote, lesser movie compared to the other installments at that time. I mean, I'm not going to say Cars is a better movie than something like, Toy Story or Finding Nemo or Up or Wall-E or anything. I mean, no, those are better Pixar movies for sure. But none of those movies was bad, like, at all. Some have even accused the first Cars movie, in fact, of stealing the plot from the Michael J. Fox movie Doc Hollywood, if any of you remember that from the 90s. And there definitely are a lot of comparisons that you can make between the two movies. They are, in a way, kind of almost the same. Except instead of Michael J. Fox going to California because he has his plastic surgery job and ends up being stuck in this small town doing community service, you have a race car that needs to get to California for this big tiebreaker race before he gets cut up in this small community for community service. Oh, that kind of does sound like the same thing, doesn't it? But the story is nice, and it really cuts to the beauty of living in this small town pretty nicely, and how sometimes the big hustle and bustle of everything going on around us can almost detract from the sort of peacefulness that comes from these small valleys, these small towns, these very close-knit communities. We even see how Lightning McQueen matures over the course of this movie, how he goes to, from an egotistical character, someone who is full of themselves, and at the very end, falls so much in love with the community and its values that he takes that with him to the racetrack, and becomes a selfless character in the end. Pretty straightforward story there. And then here comes the second movie, and again, it kind of feels like a wannabe James Bond flick. Although to be honest, while I don't necessarily mind the idea of Pixar wanting to do a wannabe James Bond flick, Cars may not have been the franchise to do that in, because in the end, it just kind of comes off as weird. I almost would have preferred if they had just simply done a separate spy movie rather than shove that into a Cars film. Because again, it just kind of comes off as weird in the long run. I mean, if you're watching this as a marathon back to back and you somehow go from 1 to 2 and you're wondering what the heck just happened here, yeah, that's basically Cars 2 in a nutshell. Because again, Cars 3 goes strictly back to racing, and then it just completely forgets all about 2, which makes 2 an odd duck. In a way, does it even make 2 worth watching? Could you even really skip 2 if you just go through the entire trilogy? In a way, you might, because it's not like Lightning McQueen really gets a whole lot of character development in here. 2 actually focuses more on Mater, if anything. Cars 2 is pretty much just a fish out of water story. Not that the first one was a fish out of water story for Lightning McQueen, but more definitely so in Cars 2, because now Mater is thrust right into the underground spy world. And of course, since he's not normal like everybody else because of his hillbilly redneck nature, it puts him into rather interesting situations. So 2 becomes more Mater's story, if anything. Not that Lightning McQueen doesn't have any focus in here. He is enticed to participate into some European racetracks, but it's more Mater's story, if anything, and you get to see how that plays out in quite an interesting way. But 2 is also, I would say, it was the end of Pixar's golden era. Remember how I said from Toy Story 1 to Toy Story 3 how Pixar had not made one bad or lesser movie? Well, Cars 2 kind of changes that, we'll just say, because Cars 2, while it's maybe not completely bad, it's not like the worst thing ever. It's definitely not great. Again, it marked the end of Pixar's golden era because it really was a first stink for Pixar. And even the follow up film Brave that Pixar did afterwards, it wasn't exactly great either. In fact, you could definitely say from the 2010s anyway, Pixar sort of had a mixed bag of results when it came to movies. You had 1 or 2 bad ones. Most of them were okay or a mixed bag of nuts. Although Inside Out was really good, but yeah, Cars 2 was definitely not maybe the follow up Pixar could have had to the first one. In a way, Cars 2 kind of has its own cult following. There are a loyal group of people that will defend this film to no end, and that's fine. But to be honest, those people are probably no more than a few years younger than I am, and probably look at this film maybe a little too fondly. I mean, sure, when I got to see this at the drive-in, it was a pretty cool experience. But once you did get to see it over and over again, yeah, you definitely got to see cracks. And even I could admit, yeah, this in no way was going to be superior to Cars 1. Then came Cars 3 some years later. This was 6 years after Cars 2. And again, like I reiterated before, it completely forgets about 2. Maybe for the better, but then again, it's complete retcon of 2. It just comes off as also pretty weird. But it gets back to its racing roots. Lightning McQueen is pretty much, I don't know if we want to call him a middle-aged man at this point, the equivalent of that. But he's an older race car driver now. And he sees basically the majority of all the other racers, they just start to slowly disappear one by one, replaced by these newer and better cars entering the racetrack. So he's struggling to stay relevant on top of this. Eventually, he even has that famous accident that we see in the very first teaser, the one we thought was going to make the movie R-rated and dark, and yes, people really did think about that when that first Cars 3 teaser came along. But Lightning McQueen basically spends the rest of the film trying to figure out what his legacy will be and how to stay relevant. He ends up, in a way, while he's trying to train himself to get back onto the racetrack, ends up really training his protege instead, in the form of Cruz Ramirez, who he basically passes the torch to at the very end of the movie. The movie also pays homage to Paul Newman, who voiced Doc Hudson in the first movie. Obviously, didn't make it back to the second film because the actor had passed away at this point. But with a little stitching in from some audio clippets left over from the first movie of Paul Newman, they were able to, in a way, put Doc Hudson back in this movie to sort of tie everything together. And you see sort of the legacy that both Doc Hudson and Lightning McQueen leave behind for the next generation of racers. So compared to something like Toy Story 3, obviously Cars 3 doesn't hold as much of a candle. It doesn't really have the weight that maybe some other Pixar films has. Not that it doesn't have some decent moments. I mean, after all, it is certainly better than the second movie. But again, there's a reason the first one is still better of the three. Of course, out of a lot of the Pixar franchises, Cars is one of the ones that's probably been exploited the most. It's not even just for merchandising. It's like short films, TV programs. I mean, they just did a Disney Plus thing like how many years ago? So this thing's basically been exploited to death. But don't worry, just in case you thought that Pixar couldn't make one more unnecessary sequel, now that we're in the realm of Toy Story 5, and gee, my childhood couldn't be any more torched, we are now getting a Cars 4 on the way. Who wants to see one more unnecessary sequel? I'm just trying to hold in the excitement. Oh, we're getting a Ratatouille 2, apparently. Yay. But yeah, that's my features of the month review for the Cars trilogy, mostly the first one. But if you haven't seen any of the Cars movies yet, I highly recommend that you check them out. Again, I know they're more on the, I should say, the kiddie side, if anything. I mean, they're all rated G, but it's something you can all watch with the family. The whole family can watch these films. This is back when Pixar and Disney predominantly actually cared about the family. Of course, we know they don't care about families anymore because, modern Disney kind of sucks. But these are all good family films to watch. So if you haven't watched Cars yet, I highly recommend you do. This was a very predominant part of my childhood, this movie. I can even remember back in kindergarten, I was at school and I apparently ate too much at lunch. And once I went out for recess and was on the tire swings, I ended up throwing up. So I got to go home early and watched Cars. And I can remember that almost like it was yesterday. So yes, this film has been probably watched to death in my house. But that's all for today. So thank you for tuning in to this Features of the Month review and hope to catch you on the fly. See you. God bless you all.